Welcome back. Are you ready? The next panel is starting anytime soon, and here's what's coming up. Scroll, tap, repeat. For many people worldwide, social media is the primary source of news. Tech companies are the new gatekeepers, the new editors, and the new referees in the fight against disinformation. Some countries are now questioning if kids should even be on social media. In others, those platforms are the only way for people to express their political views. So, clamp down or open up, regulate or liberate. Let's discuss how governance shapes news in social media. So, please take your seats. Remember to put your phone on silent mode and enjoy.
Welcome back from lunch. I'm Ben Fajzullin, anchor, filmmaker, and foreign correspondent at Deutsche Welle, and very pleased to be back with you here in Bonn. I hope you're surviving the heat. Are you doing a good job, Mana? It's hotter than Berlin, even. Who's in control when it comes to the news on social media? Can it be harmful? Regulation. Can governments do more good than harm? We've got a few panelists who can ask and answer those questions, rather. I've got some questions for you as well, so have your phones ready. I'll put up a couple questions up here on the screens in a moment, and I want your opinions. I want your questions as well, so please do put up your hand. We can get a mic to you. Renate Schroeder is our first guest. Would you like to come down? She's director of the European Federation of Journalists. Nice to have you along. Yaqiu Wang is a Chinese human rights and democracy advocate. And I'm very interested in getting your take and hearing how things are in China and how they're perceived outside as well. We also have a veteran journalist along today from RFI, Radio France International, Jean-Marc. Thank you very much for coming along. So, quick question to all of you. Who is in control, the state, big tech, or the media itself when it comes to news on social media?
Does it work? Yeah. Well, I would say big tech.
Well, in China, definitely the state.
Jean-Marc?
No one.
No one. No one's in control. What about you? Who do you think? Big tech, the state? It sounds like big tech in many cases, and I guess in China's case, the state using big tech, yeah? Another quick question, heavy or loose regulation?
Good regulation.
Good regulation, nice answer.
Same, good regulation.
Jean-Marc?
Easy one. Same answer.
Same answer. What about you? How much regulation does harm? Could you vote on that for me? How much regulation and can we get the first slide up? How much harm can regulation cause? Not at all, very much is 5, 1 is not at all. So we're in there, somewhere in between. What do you guys think? One of them's edging up, not at all. That's interesting. Anyone else? You've got a heap of people here. Can you all use your phones? It's taken me quite a while to get onto social media and to use my phone.
Should I say something?
Yeah.
To be honest, I find the question rather stupid. I'm
Why?
sorry.
That's all right.
It really depends on what regulation there is.
Yeah.
There is really bad regulation, there's over-bureaucratic regulation, there is good regulation. Generally speaking, we need regulation, we need the rule of law, we also need regulation to protect the ones who cannot defend themselves, and very often it's journalists as well.
And they're the journalists, the very journalists I have to stand up for. I have gay colleagues in Uganda, for example, who are so outspoken, where I think, oh my goodness, are they going to be alive tomorrow? And I feel that responsibility to speak up for them. You wanted to say something?
You know, the regulation that protects the government, protect the regime is not good regulation. The regulation that aims to protect the people, especially the vulnerable people, I think that's the regulation, if we want just to be, you know, simplified.
Well, let's not oppose regulation, protection, and freedom. It's not a good question, actually, because to cut a long story short, the whole story of democracy, I mean, from a European perspective, it's to get a balance between protection and freedom. So this is not a good question, I would say. The good question is to oppose journalism and propaganda. That's a good question. So if protection and regulation helps good, serious journalism, then it's good regulation, you know. And if the price of freedom is to demultiply propaganda, then let's fight these kind of freedom.
Whether or not the regulation, or let's say the regulation is really good, what if it's extremely heavy regulation that the West is pushing for on big tech? And what if that is weaponized by countries like China to be used against journalists? Where are we then?
I'm not sure if I understand it. That
If it's
regulation is used against journalists by big tech or by whom?
If there's good regulation pushed for by the West, but it's a lot, it's heavy regulation, there's a lot of it. Can that be weaponized against journalists in authoritarian regimes?
Maybe that's for you to answer. I find it difficult to imagine. I think we also have to differentiate between journalists and media, because still, I mean, we have many freelance journalists, but many journalists work for media, and very often it's the media companies first who have to deal with all the regulation. And they may complain when there is too much regulation. It may go against their business model. If that by itself is endangering journalists, I don't know. It really depends on the heavy regulation. I'm sure there is a potential of bad regulation for journalists as well. I'm focusing pretty much, I'm working on behalf of the European Federation of Journalists, and even though it's getting, in some countries, more and more autocratic, I have less experience on completely autocratic systems. Our journalists are dealing with problems also coming from big tech.
Yaqiu?
In China, I mean, the Chinese government has all kinds of regulations with the aim to crack down on free speech. You know, say, you know, if the social media platform allow a certain rumor to be spread for more than 500 times, then the social media company is liable for, you know, the effect of the rumors. Then how do you define the rumors? It's often just being weaponized by the government to crack down on free speech. So in the China context, and I'm sure in other authoritarian countries, you know, the idea of cracking down on rumors, on misinformation is often just a excuse to suppressing speech that are against the government. So in a lot of contexts, the government does exploit and weaponize that kind of so-called we want a clean internet. We want an internet that is protecting children. All that they can weaponize that for sure.
Jean-Marc, do you?
Yeah, 2 points. First is that authoritarian regimes anyhow will use heavy regulations to control and censor whatever democracies do. So what's the point? And the second point is, sorry, again, I disagree with the questions, at least with the terms of it, when you say heavy regulations, because the heaviness we have in front of us is the heaviness of social platforms. And the three problems we've got with the social platforms, that is to say, the opacity of the algorithms first, then their tendency to promote spectacular contents rather than serious ones. And the third one is that they are thieves. I mean, they steal, they pump, they swallow our journalism contents. So this is heavy. So I wouldn't say that in front of it, we try to put on heavy regulations. They're pretty light, actually.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but...
If I can just add, I think what many governments do, they take advantage of the increase of disinformation, which may be caused by the attention-driven business model of the platforms, and come up with fake news or disinformation laws, and those, of course, endanger freedom of expression and journalist rights.
Jean-Marc mentioned the opacity of algorithms. Renate, what's the solution when it comes to that? What can journalists or media organizations or states do about that?
It's not an easy one, that's for sure, because I think even for researchers to deal with algorithms, it's not an easy task because very often they are opaque. That's why we also in European legislation ask for more transparency and more accountability. We have tried within the DSA to get a recommender systems for algorithms, but we have not completely managed that. It's very difficult indeed.
I mean, I've walked into the newsroom the very next day and someone said, oh, the algorithm just changed on YouTube. And suddenly all of our content is gone, you know, right down low. And it happens overnight. How do you react to that, Jean-Marc?
It's very tricky, actually, yes, and it happens every week or so. So, I wouldn't say that the fight is over, and I think it's much more complicated than that. First of all, because we forgot to say something at the very beginning, which is that I don't think the social networks are the only referees. I mean, traditional broadcasting is still very much alive. Do not forget that. I mean, very much alive. Radio broadcasting is very strong.
I started off in
sub-countries. I mean, in Africa, in Latin America, and so on. It's very strong. First point, and second one is that we have to defend and promote our own sites and applications, and that's what we do. We have to do that because this is our own contents. So I think it's much more complicated than that, and that's why I answered to your first question, no one.
Let's go back to China. Why does the responsibility lie with West's tech to protect users from authoritarian states?
Well, because in China, the social media, there are just no freedom on social media at this point. After all these years, you know, China started the internet in 1997. Then, you know, it was serving as a liberalizing force. There are people discussing about sensitive topics. Then, you know, around 2008, particularly Xi Jinping came to power. Just the crackdown just got intensified. So I would just say, you know, there's not much political content on the Chinese internet. So as a result, people jump over the circumvention, the blockage, using VPN to talk about China on Twitter, on TikTok. You know, actually TikTok, even it's a Chinese company, TikTok does not exist in China. On other platforms to speak up against the government. So the Western platforms actually have become the place where Chinese people discuss about political content. So the Chinese government has gone after those people, trying to, you know, identify who are the people who are talking and try to get them arrested, and people are, you know, gone to jail for that. So yes, I mean, it's Western governments, you know, Western social media companies' responsibility to protect those people who have nowhere to go but to go to those platforms to speak up.
How do they do that? And where's the incentive for them to do that?
For the people who to do that? Or
For Western tech and Western states to protect those people in places like China?
well, I'm a Chinese person. I just feel like somebody needs to, protect their human rights. Somebody needs to serve a role to give them the platform to speech. When their government can do that, when their tech company can do that, I really hope, Western companies can do that role. I mean, I speak as a Chinese person. I also speak as a person from a lot of. On behalf of a lot of people from authoritarian countries, like, your democracy, help us.
Well, it's nice to want that, but what I'm getting at, we heard it this morning, big tech is run on profitability. So where's the incentive? There has to be some sort of incentive created, whether or not it's through state regulation or the actual tech companies themselves. But how do we get there? I know it's a hard question.
I do believe that good journalism, added value journalism, investigative journalism can be very profitable, actually. That's what I think. Otherwise, I just leave the room and, No, I really believe that. So we have to, we have to convince these platforms that it can be profitable, actually. And just a very small example. In the Sahel countries, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, there is censorship. The radio signals is cut. But the numbers, our numbers on YouTube are just increasing every week. So it's very profitable for YouTube, actually. Because as people can't receive us anymore, listen to us anymore on the FM, on the radio, they listen to us on YouTube. Okay,
but
so numbers are increasing.
But like you said, sure, the numbers are going up, but that's great for YouTube. I mean, it's extremely profitable for YouTube, but it's not very profitable for RFI, is it?
Well, we're not a commercial society, so as long as numbers are going up, that's fine with us. I mean, we try to reach as many people as we can and to promote our values and European democracy values, and that's it.
Renate?
Period.
I think it's excellent, but generally speaking, we are talking at every conference now on journalism about the lacking business model and the difficulty of monetization. We talked this morning about the problem that big tech is stealing content and at a scale that we have never seen of, so how can we survive in such a world? And that's why I'm coming back to my first point regarding good regulation, and I do believe the European Union in the last college has done some good regulation. They did the Digital Service Act, the Digital Media Act, the AI Act, and the European Media Freedom Act, and all that to have more transparency, accountability for platforms to help also people to have freedom of expression. There is an article regarding systemic risks. The European Media Freedom Act has a special article on content moderation that also guarantees, in theory, that media have to be asked prior by the platforms if content is being taken away or not. The problem, however, is that this European Commission is not doing what's supposed to do. They are not following, as the guardians of the treaty, the task of enforcing those very important regulations, the digital package. It seems they're doing the opposite. We have one, and you probably don't know the word omnibus, it's quite funny, but it's a sort of simplification or deregulation mechanism, which in my personal view is a response once to the yes, to the fear of tariffs, but also a response that Europe suddenly feels they have to be in this innovation race with China and the US, and they think only by deregulation they will get there, and I don't think so, but I guess we get to the point of regulation and innovation. We had it this morning as well. So, yeah, what we need is enforcement to not get where we are with China or the United States, because remember, big tech is a oligarchy, and Trump is getting more and more extreme. So the fear of having another China is a certain reality, I would say.
So you've got this good regulation. You say EU regulation has been successful, but it's the implementation that hasn't been. How do we get that implemented?
This is it's never perfect, but I think it's important, and it has been a first step. And on the DSA, they are doing a few things. There have been some cases against Google and the like, but for example, on the European Media Freedom Act, which is now national law, we feel that the governments are not taking it seriously. We need much more pressure. We also need much more awareness raising. We are doing that with many organizations, including Deutsche Welle. But we need to do much more to have more pressure from below that these laws are a reality. They are. And we may also have to go to the European Court of Justice at some point. We still have, in most member states, legal systems that work, and we are starting to use these infringement procedures, both at national level and certainly at European level.
Okay, it's not just a fight, though, about getting the news there onto social media. It's also a fight against disinformation. Jean-Marc, you wanted to say something?
No, yeah, just to add that we've got to explain and explain and explain and explain and lobby and lobby and lobby to European politicians and European Parliament and so on that we
that's what big tech does, doesn't it? It does a lot of
but
lobbying.
I mean, we are sort of international media like France Média Monde, RFI, and Deutsche Welle and the BBC and so on. We are sort of between a rock and a hard place. The rock, the social platforms, the hard place, the authoritarian regimes. And the safeguard of democracy is just here, between the rock and the hard place. So we've got to explain then all the time and keep on explaining that you've got to save that. Otherwise, it's lost. That's the point.
So you're saying media companies need to put more into their budget?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do right now with the Deutsche Welle and with the Polish television to develop sort of a European shield for information, because we need that, but we need financing, obviously.
How do you go about fighting disinformation in Francophone Africa?
That's a tricky one. You've got another 30 minutes, or well, it's all the time in every country. It's growing. And it's a very difficult fight. It's mainly coming from Russia, but not only, but mainly. And but the thing is, that's why the game is not over. That our reach is good. I mean, for example, a few months ago there was something on I don't remember which social platform saying that the Congolese president Felix Tshisekedi had just left the country. He left. He flew away, and I was completely wrong, obviously. So we decided that we had to explain that it was completely wrong. Sometimes we don't do anything. You have to do not do nothing. Just do nothing when it's wrong. It's better to do nothing. But in that specific case, we decided that we had to explain, and it had a major reach. I don't remember the figures. It was huge. So all right, there was a disinformation, but the counterattack was good and very good reach. So it's not over, And once again, you can use the algorithm in the good way. It's good and bad at the same time. So,
Yaqiu?
I live in the United States. There's no regulation, and I think people are very unhappy. So I think, social media company had a good time not being regulated, but now AI companies are realizing that they're so unpopular already. There could be a huge backlash. So this is a way, to tell tech companies, participate, cooperate on this. Otherwise, there might be a huge backlash because people are just so unhappy. And America is still a democracy.
Yeah, and exactly. I hear from Americans, it's great what you're doing in Europe. It's also regarding data protection. It's the one and only haven where you have done it, and it's also good for industry. And I think that's why I'm coming back to this apparent juxtaposition, innovation or regulation. No, it's together we can only make it. I think this is very, very important. And we hear it so often, and at EU level, we hear it now from from Commission people who would not have said that before. I think there's a lot of pressure from above that this innovation race has to be won against all odds. And then a lot of lip servicing when it comes to, yes, of course, we defend journalism, we defend press freedom. And it doesn't always work together, because journalists very often are the first one who are harassed at unprecedented level online. And auto-censorship is the only response if nothing is happening.
Is there a way of making online platforms liable for the content they share?
Well, this is our saying. We think the only way is to make them liable, also to have a level playing field, because otherwise media has to follow standards and regulations, and the online platforms who share content don't. This just doesn't work together. We have been talking also this morning about the need for financing journalism, and with this unlevel playing field, I think it's very, very difficult. And there is a slow recognition that this is necessary.
And to all of you, what about a public service algorithm to place verified news above unverified content?
I'm not sure whether I fully understand the question, but I think the answer is to cooperate on a higher level. Because especially in Europe, I mean, we have to cooperate on a higher level. Because if every public service, every public media works on its own in its own country, it won't be enough. We have to share our contents, and we have to go on this path.
Well, isn't that what you're doing, Renate? Isn't that your work? You're pooling together journalists?
Yeah, we are, well, actually, our federation is a federation of unions and associations, and we are there to protect their work, which is under fire, and on all levels, be it online or not online, and they are facing both the problems from politicians who are doing more smear campaigns, but also from big tech stealing everything. Regarding the question of public interest algorithm, it sounds very good. I don't exactly know, because I'm not an expert, how to get there. But what I think is incredibly important when we are dealing now with innovation, when you're dealing with AI tools also in the newsrooms, that there is a dialogue between the different silos, that there's a dialogue between the data specialists, the AI specialists, the journalists, the editors, the media companies. And we have that, as so very often in the Nordic countries. They are leading the game, I think, also when it comes to ethical guidelines for AI, and it works. And we have to find language learning models which are for journalists. Our journalists are keen to use AI. They know that probably only with that, and they have been using it for years. We know all the Watergates and other gates would not have been possible with data scrapping. So they need that, but it has to be also in a sort of public interest manner. So,
any last words?
Well, I'm like as a person from an authoritarian country, I'm always a little bit suspicious of public interest, because the government always use that to suppress people's will and people's interests. So I mean, I think like what does public interest means is that is the key. Of course, it's for we should support public interest, but sometimes it can be manipulated or exploited by the government.
Jean-Marc?
Let's fight.
Nice last words. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining the conversation. Jean-Marc, Yaqiu, and Renate, thank you very much for your insights. Really interesting discussion. To a higher level of dialogue, a higher level of lobbying, and more public interest. It'd be great if we could get you on board. It would be great to see more money go in that way. Hey, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And thanks for your attention.